So today we're learning about domain and range through ordered pairs. So like points like we just did, a table mapping where it looks like that, and a graph. And so what I want you to do from now on, whenever we're learning about domain and range and things like that, I would always write it like DR, like doctor, and X, Y. So it looks something like this. Because we know that our domain is our X coordinate, our range is our Y coordinate. So I would just remember like doctor XY. I know that D, since it comes first in the alphabet, is my X coordinate. My range is my Y coordinate. And so we're going to start with the highlighters. I'm going to use just a regular pen on here. I want you to underline all the domains in these points. So I want you right now to underline all the domains in each of those points, and then write it where it says domain. And if you guys need colored pens, they're back there too. Highlighters, anything that's going to help you with today. So I want you to draw a line under all the domains. And we know domains are what coordinate? X coordinates. So I want you to just draw a line under all those domains. And then write down those numbers in order right here. So make sure it starts with the smallest number and it goes to the largest number. You can raise your hand and tell me what numbers are the domain. You can raise your hand and tell me what numbers in those points are the domain. Fernando. Perfect. -4, 5, 6, and 6. Who got that? Raise your hand. Awesome. So X coordinates are your domain. So when you're writing them in order, you're writing them with the smallest first, but you see how 6 repeats? You only have to write it once. So when you're writing them, even if you wrote 6, it's fine, but you're never going to see domain written twice or range. We only have to write it once, even though the number's there twice. Who can raise their hand and then tell me what is the range? What numbers are the range at this point? Go for it.
2, -3, 1.
Perfect. 2, -1, 3, and 1. And so we want to make sure to put them in order. So we have -1, then 1, 2, and 3. I won't mark it wrong if you don't put them in order, but I want to make sure you know, like in multiple choice tests and things like that, this will be on your midterm. It will be in order like that. And it won't repeat if the number repeats. So that's our first part. Our second part is looking at a table. So basically, we know that these are just points, right? This point is just -2, 1. This point is 6, -5. So you can always write them as points if you want and do the exact same thing. Or we know the X column is always your domain. And what does f of x mean? What letter does that stand for? Y, right? And so we can always cross it out, right, and put y. It's confusing us. But we know our domains are all these right here, or these. So our domain is just -2, 6, 8, and 20. And our range is all the y's, so these right here. And so when I write it, what's the first number I should write down? What's the smallest? -5, right? Do I need to write it twice? No. Something like that. This lesson, it's easy when it's points or discrete points like that, but we are going to be learning continuous, so those graphs on the next page, it might get a little bit more. Now, see this mapping right here? How many people have seen a map that looks like that before? Cool. So what I would do is I would write them as points so you're kind of clear on what's going on. So we know 2 is my domain because it's in that first column. What number is it pointing to? 4. So I know the first point is 2, 4. The next point, I have 4, and what number is that pointing to? 2. Perfect. What's 8 pointing to? 11. And what's 9 pointing to? 1. So that's all that map is showing you. It's just showing you coordinates. It's just, you know, they try to ETN do too much. They like to just make it look like this, but all they're talking about are these coordinates. And so my domains, who can raise their hand and tell me what would my domains be in this map? Go for it.
2, 4, 8, 9.
Beautiful. 2, 4, 8, and 9. And I can tell just looking at this too. But in our next lesson, we're going to be learning about functions. And sometimes you want to look at that domain, because if it repeats, it's not a function, which we'll get into next class. Who can raise their hand and tell me my ranges then? Yeah, I know Ibu knows it. Can I see someone else? Go for it, Jayla. 1, 2, 4, 11. Last one is points. So you can either, this is the one that confuses a lot of people. What I do is I kind of just scan my x-axis, and instead of writing them as points, which you could, I kind of scan my x-axis because that's my domain, and I go up, I see 1 on 1. So I know that 1 is a domain. I see 1 on 2, so I know 2 is a domain. I see 1 on 3, 1 on 4, 1 on 5, and 1 on 6. And so I kind of just scan side to side, and I see where on the graph, side to side, which x coordinates are being used. Yeah. So, but we're just looking at the x coordinates, not the y. So we're just looking at where it falls on this axis. But we're looking at the y coordinates, which will be next, right? These are the y coordinates. So right here, what is that y coordinate? -1. So now we'll be looking, so when we're looking side to side, we're just seeing, does it fall on any of those numbers, side to side. Up and down, we're seeing, does it fall on any of these numbers, up and down. So right here, we see this one falls. What would that one be? It's right here. What would that range be? If it falls on the y-axis, or the x-axis? 0. What about this one right here? What's that range? 1. What's this range? 2. This one?
3.
3. And this one? 6. And so you could sit there and write them as points, but for the next one, the next set of notes, you can see they're going to be graphs, and you're going to have to tell without writing points, because there really aren't points that we're going to be looking at. Does this make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
If you're confused about it, you can always write them as. All right, next thing we're going to do is look at graphs, and this is where you're going to need your highlighter. And so we're going to be looking at domain and range of different graphs. And so there's 2 ways we're going to be doing it. The first one is going to be inequalities, and the second way we're going to be looking at it is intervals. So this one is the one that gets a little confusing. And so what does domain mean? What does domain mean? What coordinates? The x coordinates, right? So we're looking, are we looking side to side or up and down? Side to side, right? So I'm going to take my first color, I'm going to use yellow for domain, and I'm going to go side to side on this graph. So it goes from here to here. So first we're going to look at side to side, and I know it goes from here to here. And I'm going to highlight domain in that same color. Now, when I'm looking at that, see how there's an open circle and a closed circle? Remember, open circle means it doesn't include that number. Closed circle means it does include that number. So what letter are we talking about when we're looking at domain? X. So X is going to be in the middle. So what's the highest X that's in this graph right here? 1. See how the biggest X on that graph is 1? I'm going to put 1 right here. See how it's a filled in circle on 1? I'm gonna put a line underneath it. I remember when I did inequalities, when the line's underneath it is a filled-in circle, that means it includes that number. Now, if we look over here, what's this x coordinate? -3. And does it have a filled-in circle or open circle? Open. So there's going to be no line underneath it. So it looks something like that. So basically, this is telling me my domain is between it's either greater than -3, but less than or equal to 1. You can also write it as intervals. It may look like this. It also may look like intervals. And see how there's no line underneath that? That would be just a parenthesis. So it looks something like this, comma. And see how this has a line underneath it? This would be a bracket. So sometimes it could look like that, where if it has equal to, it's a bracket that looks like this. If it's no line underneath it, it's a parenthesis. So that just means the interval, it doesn't include -3, but it goes after -3 to 1. So they mean the same thing. I just want you to see the two different ways that it could look under assessments and things like that. And we'll be practicing with this today. The next thing we're going to look at is range. So if I'm going to get my highlighter, get your second color out, I'll use green. And so I want to look at the highest y that it goes to. See how it goes to this y right here? That's the highest y it goes to. And see how this point, it doesn't have to be where that point is. It's just the highest y. So this one actually touches it right there. The smallest y is right here. So this x is like measuring the side to side. The y is measuring up and down. Although, remember how we did x equals something and you see the line was actually up and down. We're just measuring side to side. We're figuring, or up and down, what's the highest and lowest point it goes to. And so the highest point it goes to, what's the highest y that it goes to? 0. So we know 0 is the highest point it goes to. See how it touches 0? I know I'm going to have a bracket that looks like this, and the one with a line under it. What letter is range? Y. And then what's the smallest y there is? -4. And see how it touches -4? It's going to still be a closed bracket. Right here, it would have a line under it. Because it's still, even though we don't really need to look at those open and closed circles for this one, because it actually touches the line. So we're not necessarily looking at the ending points always. Sometimes we're looking at the furthest up and furthest down it goes. Let's try this one over here. So first I'm looking at domain. So I want you to see if you could try it real quick on your own side to side to figure out what's the biggest x and the smallest x there is on this graph. So see if you can highlight it. And make sure arrows means it goes on forever and ever. What word do we use that means forever and ever? Anyone know what's the on? Infinity, right? And so if we see the x's are going on forever and ever in a negative direction, this would actually just be negative infinity. Yeah, so it doesn't have a closed circle, but see how it touches this one right here? What x is that right there that it touches? 15. So I know that 15 is going to go right here, and it's my biggest one, and it touches it, so it's going to look like that.
But it's not closed.
Yeah, so sometimes it won't be open and closed. Sometimes if you just see the function touches it, that counts. This counted over here because see, it never, from side to side, this is the only time it touched that side. And it was open. Then right here, what letter is domain? X. And right here, see how it's going on forever and ever? That way, because there's arrows, I would put negative infinity. It looks something like this. So when there's arrows involved, you know you're probably going to be dealing with infinity and negative infinity. And so because side to side, see how it's going on negative forever and ever and ever this side? I would write negative infinity. Now, if we're looking at up and down, let's go to that one. If we're looking at up and down, which is your range, right? See how it's going up forever and ever and down forever and ever? You guys see that? If it's going down forever and ever, that's negative infinity. These numbers are getting negative. What if it's going up forever and ever? Positive infinity. So how you would write that? It looks something like this. Negative infinity to positive infinity. Or y goes from infinity to negative. It also can mean all, if you see all real numbers, that means the same thing.
So, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be close circle. It never has that close.
Yeah, so if there's no open or closed circle, first of all, if there's arrows, you know there's going to be an infinity involved. And if it touches the line, I know it's automatically going to be closed. The only time it would be opened if there was an open circle involved.
All right.
Okay, let's try in that packet. I'm gonna try the first couple are pretty easy, but I want to try the back page. So let's look at the back page. Like turn the whole thing, this one, the whole thing over to right here. This is just practice of points and things like that. Actually, let's look at this one right here. Is that on the back page or the second? Cool. That's on the back page. So it's the back right corner. Does everyone see this one right here? It's on the very back of this, not your checker. Yeah. On the very back. So they're looking for the range. Does the range mean up and down or side to side? Up and down. So I know when I'm using my highlighter that I'm using greens. That's what I usually use for range. Now, what's the smallest y there is right there?
30.
30, right?
Yeah.
And so, first of all, range has to do with x or y. What letter?
Wait.
The range. Remember, if I'm writing this on my paper, I know it's dr xy. So I know that the range is my y. Which ones can I cross out automatically that don't have a y in it? Which answer choices?
B and D.
See how B and D don't have a y? They're trying to trick you. Then we look at, okay, we can see it's from 30, and we can also see it goes up until 80. And so because of that, this would be my answer. And so you're not always going to have to write it as both every time, the interval and the inequality. I just want you to see, mainly it's going to be inequality, but I want you to see what that interval looks like. Do you guys want to go over one more? Okay, let's go on this page. Which one is it? Let's do this one right here, this graph. And so when we're looking at a domain and range of any linear function, remember linear just means to look to straight line. It's always the same. See how from side to side, if it's going up side forever and ever and ever, what's that called? See how it's going side forever and ever? Infinity, right? And see how it's going this way forever and ever? What's negative infinity? So no matter what, all linear functions are the same if they have arrows. It always looks like that. The range, see how it's going up forever and down forever? It's always the same thing, so now it's gone. So any linear function, which we didn't learn anything really besides linear so far, but if they do ask you about linear functions, the domain and range is always this. Remember, we also can call that all real numbers. So if they do mention that on the test, it's always all real numbers. Because it's going in both directions forever and ever and ever. I'm going to show you what it looks like too on your homework right here. So the homework is this last one. It says visual domain and range. And so this one, they want you to find the domain. So right here, domain, is that side to side or up and down? Side to side, right? And so I see that this side is at -2, right? So I would put -2, but see how it's an open circle on -2? Would I have a line underneath the inequality or no line? No line. And if I'm dealing with domain, I know I'm dealing with x, and because they want you to use the inequality signs on them. Then right here, what's the biggest x they have? 9. And see how it's an open circle? I would use no line underneath it, and that would be your answer. Remember, if it is a line that looks like this, any linear line, what's always your domain or range? To infinity, or all real numbers.
Or you put all real.
Yeah, you can just click that. How many people would like to do this on your Delta Math right now for practice before a mini quiz? Okay, so we can go back. Your number that you have on your desk, you could come back here and get the computer that goes with your number, and you can get that homework done. I'll let you get that homework done in class because I know there's a lot of at midterm review. So you can come back here, just grab the number that's on your desk. You can get started to the 5 questions.
You gotta do that.